Hey everyone, Leo with the Dreaming Tree, and welcome to the assembly video for our Batty pumpkin centerpiece / luminary. Now I have all of my pieces cut out, as should you, so let's just dive right in and get started on the first Halloween project for 2021. We're going to start off by grabbing this piece here. This is our base, and inside the base is going to go this little box to kind of help it. It's basically to help it stay nice and even, and so it doesn't sink in at all. So we're going to grab this piece. I've already pre-folded everything, and we're going to construct a very simple box. So make sure your glue is ready to go, and we're going to begin by just simply putting a little bit of glue on one of these triangular tabs. It doesn't matter which one. There's 4 of them total. And then you're going to take the neighboring side, bring it up, and get that tab right behind the neighboring wall, and just hold that in place for a few seconds, let it set. Okay, and then we'll move right on to the next side here. And I'm using my finger to just spread that glue around a little bit. And again, we're going to do the same thing, just tuck that right in there. If it helps, you can move this large flap out of the way so that you can get your finger in there a little bit better. Now, I'm starting with this because it doesn't need to be perfect. This is a good opportunity to just kind of get your feet wet for the rest of the assembly. This box is going to be completely hidden because it's going to be inside of that structure that we're going to put together next. Okay, now this side has 2 tabs, so just get the first one in place. And if you're doing a good job spreading your glue out and using as little as possible, you shouldn't have to hold it in place very long. Okay, so I've got all 4 sides done here, and you'll notice we have 3 tabs here. Don't need to be super precise with the glue here. Just close this up. Again, this is not going to be seen by anybody. It's just going to be hidden away. And just hold that down for a few moments, let that glue set. If you want, you can just kind of put it on your surface, put something somewhat heavy on it to let that set. Okay, now here's the main part of our base. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a lid, and then we have a series of sides here. There's a total of 8. And we're going to join those sides using the little triangular tabs here. And before we close this up, we're going to take that little rectangle, it might be a square, either way. I'm going to take that and just pop that inside. Okay, and it's important here. This one you definitely want to take your time on, make sure that you get it right. And just like we did with that little box, we're going to take that tab, tuck it behind the neighboring wall, and just press and hold that in place for a few moments and let it set. We're going to repeat that 8 times as there are 8 sides. Okay. And you'll notice that on one side of this, there are a series of little markers there, and that is to help us with the placement of the pumpkin that we'll eventually be creating here. Okay, but go ahead and get your glue on the next tab and bring this piece over, press that tab up against the inside. And I just noticed that I had a little bit of glue on my finger and I got it on this surface, but that's okay. If you blemish the surface, it's not a big deal. We do have a panel that's going to go over that. Okay, so moving right along here. Notice that the first project I do after completing a set, I sort of have to kind of regain my wheels a little bit. Once I really get into a zone, things sort of move exponentially as far as the speed and efficiency. All right, moving right along here. And I'm using this little glass that one of our dreamers, a good friend of mine, Chris from Florida, gave me a long time ago, and I didn't try to get into the habit of using it, but it is very helpful. Keeps the glue upside down, ready to go. I don't normally have problems with having to push that glue down because it makes its way back to the bottom, but it is kind of handy now that I really think about it. I'm always trying to make things as efficient as possible. And one thing I should be doing, and you know what, this might be a good idea, is just to keep the cap of the glue close to the glue bottle so that you remember to put the cap on. Put the cap on after you use it when you're done using it, because I guess if I had to add up the amount of time that I spend cleaning out the nozzle of my glue bottle, it adds up. And that's just from poor discipline and bad habits of just not doing it. All right, so just moving along here, just putting glue on the little triangular tabs and closing this thing up, forming the shape so that it's dimensional. And then we'll move on to adding the little panel. I think we're gonna make the hat second, since it is a separate piece, and then we'll do the actual pumpkin body last. Kind of like save the best for last. And here is our last tab. Again, I'm just kind of using my finger to spread that glue out to the very edge. Okay, you can push this down, get it out of the way to help you with this one. Just make sure that you've got that nicely aligned. I'm getting a lot of glue on my finger right off the bat here. And that looks good. Okay, and that's pretty much already dry. You can put that down on your surface and press down from the inside if you'd like. Okay, so now you'll notice again that there's also a few little markers in the center here. That's to help you make sure that you get this little square nice and centered. If it's a little bit off, it's okay. But do your best to use those guides to your advantage. That will help displace any weight that you put inside there. If you do have a electronic tea light that you're going to put in there, that's going to prevent this thing from sagging. Well, you can see behind me, there's a lot of paper projects that I've done over the years, and they seem to hold up very well, actually, especially the 3D stuff. So I'm putting glue on the tabs, and then I'm going to put a little extra towards the bottom. That's where I'm going to take and spread that glue out to the very edge. I have to be very careful when working with black cardstock. The glue that I'm using is Scotch Quick Dry, but as much as it says that it dries clear, it does. But that doesn't mean you don't see a little bit of a gloss or anything like that. Luckily, we don't really have to worry about that too much since we have that panel going in, but it's something to keep in mind. And it doesn't make or break a project, but sometimes if you get too much, it does blemish it to the point where it's noticeable. Okay, and if you want, you can put a little bit of glue in the center there. And we're just going to close this up. Focus on getting the side opposite of the side that's already hinged aligned first. Okay. And then doing that, everything else, all the other sides usually just kind of fall into place. You may need to take and slightly nudge the walls inward, depending on how much when you fold it at the score mark, sometimes there's a muscle memory there with the paper, and it may tend to kind of flare out a little bit, but it shouldn't be a big deal. Okay, so make sure that your sides are making good contact with that vertical wall, this here, and that looks and feels very stable now. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take these pieces here. We've got this stripe pattern here, and there's two pieces with 4 sides. This one here has a series of tabs on the ends. Okay, we're going to start with that, and we're going to begin by applying glue to one of the 2 center sections here. And you know what, you can actually just do the 2 center sections. I think that's going to be fine. Okay, if you do have maybe a little bit too much glue, just kind of dab it with your finger a bit, wipe it off, and what we're going to do is we're going to find one of the corners, place the strip right on top of that corner at the fold. make sure that the top and bottom here are flush with the top and bottom of the base, and just kind of continue to hold that in place for a few moments and let it set. And then we can take and peel back one of the ends, apply our glue to that as well as that little triangular tab there. And if you need to, just kind of hit that with your finger a bit and then pull that over onto the next side as well as that tab there. And again, feel with your fingers and make sure that this panel is nice and flush with the top and bottom. Okay, and we're going to peel this back and do the same thing. Here we go. Perfect. And fold that over. And I can see right here, got a little bit of a gap there. And I mean, it's not horrible, but I'll show you how you can fix it. I've got a scrap piece of paper here. I'll throw a little bit of glue right on the very end of it and just slide that right in between the two sections and just paint a little bit of glue in that area and then press that down and hold it. And you can see how immediately you can see a nice difference there. Again, not make or break. If yours is significantly more apparent that you've got a gap there, I would highly recommend cleaning that up. It only takes a few seconds and it really, gives your project a more professional look. And regardless of if you're just gifting this to someone or if you're selling it at a craft fair, you want to try to do your best work. Okay, so I've got the other half of the strip. I've got glue in the two center sections. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 sides left. We're going to anchor this or glue it to the middle two sections, obviously. We don't want to leave a gap anywhere. Now you can see another tip, quick tip here. There is, well, if you have pattern paper like I do, for this section that's a white core, and this applies to pretty much any situation where you have a white core paper with score marks. Sometimes those score marks, and as well as the ends here, you'll actually see that white core, and it sometimes doesn't look very good. So what you can do is just take an ink pad. I'll grab my Memento inks, and right here it's sitting on a black section. I'll hit that with a little bit of black here. It's sitting on black, black. This one's sitting on a little purple. So I grab a purple ink pad, just hit it. Or you can make it all uniform, do it all black, whatever works, just to kind of hide that. It's not usually very noticeable, but if you think that, after looking at it, you're like, oh, well, that kind of sticks out. Just take a second, grab some ink, and just hit it with an ink pad. Okay, so I'm putting glue on the last section, folding it over right on top of that little triangular tab that we had from the previous piece. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the base. Like I said, I will hit that with a little bit of ink later on. Now also, if you take a look at the final photo of the project, you'll see that I also added some bling on to the side here. It's bling on a roll, so I just have to cut it to size, and I'll use probably just one section right up at the top there and just hot glue that all the way around. Give it a little extra color, a little extra bling. Okay, so that's the base. And let's take a look at our hat. Now, there's something important that I need to mention while we work on the hat, and that is there's a band that goes around the hat, and the band is, you guys will have, the band will come in two sections like this with 4 sections on each piece. We've also, in the extras folder, just because, well, in our case, we used a stripe pattern, and instead of having them all connected, okay, because you can see what happens when you cut this out of, as one piece. If you have a stripe pattern like that, it's not going to stay straight up and down. You see how that one kind of changes? That one looks kind of up and down, and that one's going over to the left. So if you are using a stripe pattern and you have, and you want it to, be consistent throughout, up and down, as far as the direction of the stripes, we have that option for you in the extras folder. Okay, but this is the basic structure of the hat. Okay, and just make sure that you've got everything pre-folded and ready to go. What we're going to do is simply connect all of these little sections using this large tab here, and then we'll follow that up by connecting the other section with the smaller tab. Okay, and got a total of 8 sides. The cool thing is it's still connected in the center. That makes things so much easier when we're able to do that based on the dimensions of something. Okay, so we're putting glue on the tab here. Make sure you get that glue all the way up to the top. Take that, tuck it behind its neighbor, and press and hold that down. Okay, now this section here is going to have, once we put the panel on, it is going to have a little border around the outside. With that said, you do want to try to be a little more precise with your glue on this section here. Okay, and if you're like me and you want those tabs to be perfect, in this case what you do is you don't keep the tab on the same level. I always bring it back like that so that when I do spread the glue out, there's no chance of it getting onto that other section because it's folded pretty much completely on top of it. So as I spread it there, I got it all the way out to the edge, but I did not come across onto the surface. Okay, so that's another little tip there. All right, so we'll take this section and place it right onto that tab and give it a couple squeezes up and down the tab there, all the way down to the edge as well. Okay, and just kind of continue on. We're going to repeat this process 7 more times until we have the main structure of our hat assembled. Now, one other thing too is I typically try to put any panels that I can down while the project is still flat, but in this case, because the hat is angled, we're actually going to put the panels on after the hat is constructed. I guess you could possibly put it on 1/2 or 1 segment of the hat, but I think things might just kind of start getting in the way. So we have to wait until the actual structure is fully constructed before we apply the panels. It won't be hard though. Okay, so once we have that section in place, moving on to the next tab here at the bottom. And again, if you want, I highly recommend it, spread that glue out to the very edge of the tab. It's going to make everything appear nice and seamless, almost like it was 3D printed. Okay, there we go. Line that up. If you have any excess glue showing, just take and rub that off before it has a chance to really set. Okay, so moving right along here. Again, this is going to be pretty repetitive, so I'll try to offer as many tips as I can instead of just repeating myself. Again, make sure you get that glue out to the very edge of the tab, grab the neighboring piece and tuck it right back there. Make sure you get it as lined up as you can. I have a little bit of glue popping out of there. Just rub that off. There we go. And this process is going to go, like I said, a lot faster if you make sure you go easy on the glue. Don't need to overdo it. And I may have just put a little bit too much on there just now. You'll get used to it. Okay. So lately I've been thinking about, I've seen some posts, well, what do you do with these? Well, this one, for example, obviously, I think anyone that loves Halloween would appreciate getting this as a gift to display in their home for Halloween. You can put a little tea light in there. Since we have some vellum, it will illuminate the vellum areas. Specifically, I think we've got, yeah, well, just like a jack-o'-lantern. The mouse and the mouth and the eyes are going to be illuminated. And one thing I've been thinking about lately is, you know, how you can take and integrate some of these projects with other materials. I guess specifically, just other things that you would find at the craft store, such as faux flowers and anything that you get from that floral department, and to create some sort of something else to complement it. I did that recently with the what's it called? The windmill, from that bundle that had the windmill, and I took it. I had this circular tray, and I put styrofoam on there, and then a little bit of green moss surrounding the entire windmill, and then I took these faux tulips from the floral department, probably at either Hobby Lobby or Michael's. I tend to go to Hobby Lobby for my floral. They seem to have a better variety and sometimes higher quality stuff as well. But yeah, I just kind of created an entire display / centerpiece around that item using stuff that I pretty much had around the house. Just kind of repurposed it. Sometimes you buy this or that, and it served its purpose for a little while, and maybe doesn't fit your decor anymore, or I don't know, you did something completely different in that room. Try to find some of those materials and be like, well, what can I do with this, and how can I incorporate it into a recent project that I did from Dreaming Tree, and see what you come up with. I think it's fun to mix and match various types of media to come up with something. Okay, so I'm just working my way here down the tabs again, getting that glue out to the very edges, folding those tabs back while I do that, just to make sure I don't get glue on my surface, and then just tucking it right behind its neighbor, making sure that those two edges line up nicely, and just keep on cruising here until we get it complete. And then we're going to put our little panels on. Also going to create a small little 3D flower, nothing major, but our Batty pumpkin has a nice 3D flower on it as well. Okay, just spread that glue out and just working our way around. I've got a couple more to go here. We'll be done before you know it. Okay, just line that up. There you go. Now, as we begin to close this piece, as we get to the last tab, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to get your hands in there. Just be gentle with all these pieces so you don't accidentally rip or bend or warp any of the sections. Okay, and I'm just kind of moving things out of the way to make it easier for me to get my fingers in there. Actually, it's just the one finger. Okay, and line that up. There we go. And just press that down into place. And you can see here little bits of white showing, but that's okay as long as they're not on the surface and you just have them in the cracks there where the two sections meet. I don't think they're really going to impact your project all that much. Okay, so we're nearing the end here. Again, now we've got a little less room to get everything in there, but still pretty straightforward. Just be careful. Okay, and again, it's a little awkward to hold right now. There we go. Whatever works. There we go. Okay. And grab this section here. Get it nice and aligned. There we go. Just like that. Okay. And try to get your hand and your fingers up there towards the top section as well. We want to make sure everything's making good contact. Had a little bit of glue on my finger there. It got on the surface, but that's going to be covered up. So I'm more concerned about the little border that we need to kind of maintain when we put those panels in place. All right, so getting very near the end here. Okay, I think I skipped a section. Oh no, I didn't. It looked like it was already glued down. Okay, line that up. There we go. Just like that. All right, so now we're down to the last tab here, and we just probably gonna have to take our glue bottle and pop it in there. Just kind of move the other section out of the way. I'm still gonna use my fingers to get that glue out to the edge of the tab, but just try not to blemish the other section there. And you know what, it might help, especially in the corner there. Let me move this a little bit. And that works. If you are a little concerned about the very edge of that, just take your scrap piece of paper that we used to paint that glue into that little crevice there and use that to get that glue out to the edge. Okay, and you can see I've got a little splotch of glue there. It's okay. A little more came out now. And just line that up. Wipe that glue off before it does anything to your project. And you know, it's a Halloween project, so if you have a few little oddities, aka mistakes, it's not the end of the world. It might even look like it's part of it. And you can get really crazy with the distressing on, you know, Halloween projects, and they'll still look pretty, looks like it was almost expected. Halloween typically is a little grungy. I mean, it can be. Okay, so the last tab there, you can see that glue, taking it and spreading it out. There we go. And last one, pop that right behind that section and press that into place. Okay. All right, so that turned out nice. And again, before we put the horizontal band around this, we're going to put these panels in place. Now I did take and ink the edges of this with a turquoise. Again, that's all going to be dependent on what type of paper you use, obviously. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try two techniques here. I'm going to put glue on both sections for this first one. We'll see how easy that goes. It might be a better idea if, especially if you're new, you might want to do this in sections. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and you can see there's a crease there, a fold, and we're going to use that as kind of a guide to line this up. Now obviously we want this to be centered so that we have a nice even border on both sides, and then just press that into place once you have that. Okay, so that actually worked out pretty well. I don't know that I'm going to need to do these in sections, but if you want to, you can. I had a little bit of glue squirt out there, but that's okay. And that looks good. Okay, that worked out nicely. So we're going to repeat that process. And again, you do have some score marks here, so make sure that you are folding at the score mark so that this thing sits nice and flat. But again, if you want, I'm just going to do this so I can illustrate it here if it's easier for you. I'm just going to put glue on just the top section here. Cool thing about that is you can actually place it on the surface without worrying about getting it blemished, and then push it up against the little score mark and then press that down. Oh, that didn't work out very well, did it? There we go. It just slid a little bit, but it's fine. Okay, so then you can just focus on getting the top half in place, and then we can just peel this back and glue the bottom half. So whichever way is easier for you is fine. If you want to try to do both at the same time, that's fine. If you feel that having that bottom section without glue helps you get the placement better, then by all means, go with that method for sure. Okay, so I'm going to keep on rocking and rolling here. I think I'm just going to do the two at a time here, just to kind of save time. So, yeah, I've noticed we got a lot of people that are excited for Halloween. I know I am. I know last year was kind of crazy with lockdowns, and we weren't really sure what was going to happen with trick-or-treating for the kids. A lot of people did the trunk and treat, where people went to people's trunks instead of their homes. We actually wanted to respect people that didn't want visitors. So I actually handed out glow sticks with a little poem that I wrote saying that if you want trick-or-treaters, to leave it hanging on your mailbox. And I'd say probably 90% of the people cracked open that glow stick and had it on their mailbox for Halloween. So it worked out really well for the kids. Obviously, you know, we did all the social distancing stuff and made sure that it was as sanitary as possible, and the kids had a great time, and no one got sick. So it was nice. We got to kind of save Halloween last year, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen this year, because things are getting weird again. So, all right. So just moving along here again. If you're finding this process repetitive and you want to just pause me, you can do that, and then just fast forward the next step. Once you see me pick up these sections here, that is your cue to stop and hit play again, because we're going to put that section on next. Okay, so just again, make sure that especially the sides here, the perimeter, make sure that's all making good contact with the actual structure. That's probably the most important. Okay, and just moving right along here. This looks like a graphic 45 paper. I mean, graphic 45 has probably the most unique style I've seen. I've had a chance to talk to Diane, who owns that company, and it was quite a while ago, and she's still at it, making some of the most beautiful paper on the market, in my opinion. Now, vintage may not be your style, but if it is, and you have not heard of graphic 45, you certainly want to take a look. You've got some wonderful papers, especially the Halloween stuff. They got some great Christmas, vintage Christmas stuff, and it really just kind of takes paper projects to another level without you having really to do much at all. Just because of, especially on this side here, you can see how they have that sort of tea or coffee stain sort of look on some of the projects that automatically just kind of gives it that vintagey feel. A lot of work goes into those projects. Now, here I had a little section here that was kind of leaving a little bit of a gap. I don't want that. We can always go back in and clean that up as well. So if you feel like, well, I got this section here that's really kind of pulling away, it's not sitting as flat as I'd like it to, just grab yourself a scrap piece of paper, throw a little bit of glue on there, and just tuck it in between those layers, and give that little section some extra TLC. Okay, here we go, last one. We can move on to the panel, the band, I should say. Okay, so this is coming out nicely. This is, I think that this hat is relatively easy. It's on the easier side of, you know, like 3D paper assembly stuff. This isn't really challenging at all, I don't think. Definitely would rank that up there on the easy charts. Okay, here we go. And if you can make a greeting card from our site, I'm sure you can make something like this. All right, but that looks great. And again, I'm going to show you how to put on the default, what I'll call the default version of this. Okay, but again, in the extras folder, we have these segments completely separated. Should you have, like I said, a stripe pattern that you want to incorporate, or even if you want to kind of alternate them as well, you could do that as well. Okay, so now with this, just like we did on the what's it called, the base, we're going to take and we're going to start with the piece that has little tabs on the end, and we're going to apply our glue to the two middle sections. Now, for the sake of making sure that I don't get glue squirting out, I'm going to focus this glue pretty much in the center of this little section here. I don't think it's going to really matter If we get the glue out to the very edges, we just need to kind of keep this in place. It's not doing anything structural. So anything I can avoid to get glue in places where I don't want it, I'm gonna do that, okay? And you can see how nice that looks. Just make sure that this folded area here aligns and sits right on top of the fold from the actual structure. And yes, we are going over the panel, but that's okay. And perfect. So those two sections are in place. We can peel back one of the ends here and apply our glue. Again, trying to keep it in the center. And then for this section here, the triangle, I am gonna cover that completely. Okay, and try to get that out to the very edges as well. And just fold that over. Make sure that it is following the score mark there. Just like that. Okay, and then do the same thing on the other end. And get a little glue right at the very, very end of that tab and press that down into place. And it looks like that line is lined up nicely. Okay, so to complete this now, we're going to take the other half and just pop it into place as well, just like we did the first half. We're going to start with the two middle sections here, and I'm going to focus the glue in the center. Make sure you're getting it on these two panels here. You don't want to start here because then you're going to overlap. So you want to pop it right in there. Use the score mark as kind of a guide. It should sit perfectly on this fold here. And then check your work here. Make sure that ultimately this will pop right on top of that section perfectly, and it does. Okay, so off camera, once we get this in place, I'm going to actually glue each of these on manually, one at a time, because that's the look that we're going for. We want these stripes to be up and down. It's not going to change anything you're doing. It's just, again, an aesthetic decision for our version. We just want to make sure that it looks the way we wanted it to, the way we dreamed it. Okay, and the last one here. Make sure that you get that glue out to the very edge. We want that to not come undone. And that should meet perfectly with the other end. If you need to kind of give it a little bit of a nudge, now's the time. Okay, so that's that for, well, the majority of the hat. And again, I mentioned we're gonna put a little flower together, and we've got some little tendrils that we're gonna add as well, because after all, it is a pumpkin. Okay, so I'll be back here, and we're gonna start putting the actual pumpkin together. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is just put these little guys together, and you'll notice that on each of these, there's a set of score marks that kind of run through the center. And what you want to do is just kind of pinch and fold right at that score mark. And that's just going to help give this piece a little added dimension. Okay, so just kind of take it. If you need to, you can put one finger in the center, use these two fingers underneath, press down to begin folding it. And then once it's semi-round, you can take and just really give it a good pinch, especially right there at the tip. Okay, we'll do that to both sides for all four. We've got one of these going on the front of our little hat and the other going on the back. Okay, and what we're gonna do, all these pieces are identical, and each one's gonna use two. All we're gonna do is just glue them together right in the center. Okay, so just take your glue, put a tiny little dot right in the center, take the other piece, and just align those two centers together and press and hold. And then you'll want to adorn that, the center of that, with a little bit of bling, whether it be a rhinestone or a pearl, whatever it might be. Just throw a little dot of glue right in the center. I've got this fancy little flower-shaped rhinestone that I'm just going to glue right to the center. I'm going to let that sit. I need a little extra glue on there. Throw a nice little ball of glue on there. And we're going to let that dry. If you are putting bling on it, I would not trust whatever adhesive comes with it. Typically, it That stuff does not, it's not going to withstand the test of time if you're making one of these projects and you want things to stay put and not fall apart. I would highly advise adding glue to whatever embellishment you plan on using. You can use hot glue if you want. I don't think it's necessary. I'll do a nice little dot of glue there and just pop that right on there, right in the center. Okay. And when we're all done with this, once this is dry, we'll come back to this in a second. We're just going to glue that on the side of the hat. And then we also have these little tendrils. I just want to show you kind of what we're going to do with those. I'm going to grab some various size dowels, and we're going to actually just take and curl these. A couple of these are going to be coming from the area that has the pumpkin leaf. We've got 2, I think maybe actually 4 leaves. And kind of just like you're curling your hair, you can just wrap it around the dowel. Okay, and this is going to give it a really nice curl once we release it. Okay, so we can do that. There's a couple in the front. And of course, you know, the thinner the dowel, the more pronounced the curls are going to be. So if you want to make it really curly, get a really thin dowel. This is, I think, a 1/4 inch dowel. Just wrap it around. And we're going to incorporate these in a few sections. One section is definitely going to be behind the little leaves that we just created. So, okay, so there's another version. And then maybe you just want one section where it just kind of curls in the center. Just curl the center part. Okay, and then maybe what we can do, we can kind of train it a little bit so that's just, you know what, we got to wrap this around a couple times actually just to get that center part to stick. Okay, just give it a little bit of a press. Okay, so you get the idea. We'll leave that up to you as far as how much curl you want, and I'll show you where everything goes here in just a second. Okay, so what we're going to do, once we actually place the hat on the base or the actual jack-o'-lantern itself, it's going to be on this area. We want it to be right in the center of the hat. So the eyes are going to be here and the wings are going to be on the side. So one of these is going to go here. The other one is going to go on the opposite side right there. We're going to put it right on top of the band. Okay, now if you want, you can grab, I think the best thing, since we're working right on the corner of a section, you can hot glue it if you want. I'm actually going to use a pop dot, a 3D pop dot. Okay, we'll put that right on the back. It's super sticky, and that's going to keep it in place for us. Just going to pop it on just like that. Okay, and that gives it a little added dimension as well. I just pressed that down. Some of that glue just came squeezing out, but that's okay. All right, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take some of these little tendrils, and for the front of the hat, I'm going to put 2 of them on there. We're just going to glue them back there. Okay, but we want to, like I said, we're going to kind of curl this. I'm going to curl this. Just going to give this a good curl around my dowel. And then we can always kind of style it however we want after we give it a little bit of volume here. Okay. So I'm actually going to take this, and one end is going to go right in back there. You can technically, if you want, you can take it and glue it to the back of one of the leaves. Another thing you could do is put a tiny little bit of a 3D foam square on there. Okay, just make sure that's making contact back there. If it helps, grab a real tiny dowel so that you can actually press on the back of that and press up against it from the front just to make sure that it stays put. Okay, now if you really want to get specific with this, you could always put a little touch of glue in one of these little sections, like right up here. Okay, and then you can bring this down and then put a touch of, oh, I'm pulling on it and I shouldn't be. Okay, so just make sure that this thing is set before you start playing with it. I'm just gonna leave that alone, let that set, and then I'm gonna take another tendril here and get it glued into place. Okay, but you get the idea here. You can do 2 tendrils on each one. I think that's all we need. We just need to reserve, just need to reserve 4 of these in various sizes. Doesn't matter which size. I would kind of maybe keep a few short and a few long ones. We're gonna need that for the actual pumpkin itself, okay? So let that set first before you go playing with it too much, okay? And you're gonna do the same thing on the other side with this guy here. And again, 2 more tendrils, but we do wanna keep a total of 4 for the base, okay? So I'm gonna put the hat off to the side for now, and we're gonna begin working on the main structure here. Okay, so we'll take a look at these pieces. I've already pre-folded everything, and you will notice that we have our little numbering system on here. At the very bottom of each of these sections is a Roman numeral, well, kind of. Okay, so there's a 1 there, and we've got a 2, and of course this is gonna be 3, and 4. 4 is 4 little lines in the shape of a square or a circle. Of course, it's always the last place you look. I'll fill it in so you can actually see it. Okay, 1, 2, and 3 are traditional as far as Roman numerals go. The 4 is like that, okay, which means that a 5 is that same shape, the 4 score marks in a square shape with a 1 next to it. So that's 4, that's 5. So 6 is going to be this shape with 2 of these. 7 has 3 single lines, and 8 has 2 of these. Let me find it here, I'll show you. There it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it almost looks like 2 zeros, but in fact they're 8 marks, but forming the shape of a square or a circle. Okay, so we do need to put them in order. All right, we're going to start off with number 1, and number 1 is going to get glued to section number 2. I think the best thing to do is start up at the top. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. So this is going to be probably, it's not hard. This is just going to be pretty repetitive, just because we're doing all these little tabs one at a time. Now, what I'm going to do, again, make sure you've got piece 1 and 2, so you don't goof that up. I'm going to get the first tab lined up. I'm going to do 1 at a time. But then once we get it anchored, I think we can go ahead and start doing more than 1 tab at a time, because otherwise this will take a long time, and it's not necessary. So I'm going to fold this back, get it out of the way, so I can reveal these tabs here, and I'm going to start by doing, we're going to do 3 at a time here. I bet I could do more, but I'm going to get a feel for it, and then if I feel that, yeah, I can definitely handle 3, I might even just do the rest of them, all of them. Okay, so grab that next section, line it up, and press down. Now, what's going to make or break this project, not really make or break, but what's going to determine how long you spend on it is the amount of glue that you use. I'm going to highly recommend that you try to be thorough but sparse with how much glue you use. Okay, so what I mean by that is make sure you cover everything and you get that glue out down to the very end of the section there, but also don't use too much. Okay, keep it nice and thin. And if you feel it with your finger, it should feel kind of tacky when you're done. And then that way you can literally just press on it once or twice, like I am right now, and it's done. It's not fully dry, but it's gonna hold on. It's gonna hold on real good. And you can see how clean that looks. There's no glue popping out, no nothing. Okay, so that's piece 1 and 2 joined together. Now we're gonna move on to piece number 3. Again, first tab we are going to anchor in place before we move down to the rest of them. Now this one's going to be a little odd shaped because we had to kind of change up, make sure you're using piece number 3, had to change up what you would usually be a tab there, and kind of shape them differently so that, well, it doesn't, interfere with the cutouts here, because we're gonna have vellum back here to create that cool illuminated effect. But I'm gonna go ahead and say that I can get all these done in one shot. Again, be thorough, but be sparse with that glue. Okay, we don't need a lot of glue on here. And there's a tiny little tab there and a tiny little tab there. You want to make sure you get that too. That's all part of it. And this is the only one that's going to be kind of strange as far as how the tab looks. But again, make sure you get that glue out to the very edge. And I can feel that it's already tacky. And I'm just going to start lining that up and giving it a quick press. And it should hold nicely. If it's slipping, sliding around, and it's not grabbing, chances are you're using too much glue. Now again, this is that little section here. You do want to get this lined up as accurately as you can. Not difficult at all, just a little different than what you're used to. But we do have to accommodate for our pumpkin's facial features. Okay, there we go. And this down here may have been a little too dry. I might have spent too much time in this section here, but actually, maybe not. It's looking pretty good. Okay, and you can see our little pumpkin's face is starting to really come together here. All right, so far so good. Everything's staying put. We don't have a lot of glue everywhere. That's always a good sign. And we'll go on to section 4 and begin by anchoring just the top tab. Okay, spread that glue out. I like to kind of dab it too. Really gets it nice and tacky. And just get that first one lined up. You can see I've got ink all over me, I've got glue all over me. Totally normal. I was inking like a madman today. So that's why I've got turquoise ink all over my fingers. Okay, all right, moving along here. Again, these are all the same now, so this should go pretty quick. I'm gonna try to do all of them. Get your glue on there. If you notice the first few tabs have too much glue on them, go easy on the rest of them, because you can always take and kind of spread glue from one to the other if maybe you have less or more on one of the tabs and you want to try to make it as even as possible. But that looks like a good amount. And again, I'll show you here. Get that nice and lined up. Quick squeeze is all you should need. And that paper should be gripping pretty well. Okay. Now if you tried all of them and you're getting down to the last one and you're noticing that it's maybe not as sticky, maybe break it down into two applications. Maybe don't do the bottom one, do it last. It's just a lot easier to get them done in all one shot. It goes a lot faster. But if you're, like I said, if you're finding that when you get to the bottom one, it's not sticky anymore, maybe break it down into 2 sections. All right, so there's section 4. I've got section 5 locked and loaded here, ready to go. And let me just get that anchored first. I'll do that before we do the rest of them. It just kind of sets the tone for everything. It would not be fun to try to do all of these at the same time. It would end up being a huge mess. Definitely helps to get things anchored. Now you'll notice that here it's kind of round. This top section does sort of start going the opposite direction, like up instead of curved. So that's something to keep in mind as you're putting this on there. It'll naturally end up in that shape if you get the 2 sides aligned, but it's just a little observation just so you know that it is somewhat slightly changing direction. Okay, now on this piece here, you'll notice that the middle 2 tabs have little slits in them, and that's on purpose. We're using those. We're going to anchor the wings of our Batty pumpkin using those little slits. So that is not an accident, that's by design. And I did put a lot more glue on these tabs than the previous. Not on purpose, I think it's just I wasn't completely focused while applying them. And it may take a little bit longer for these to dry, we'll see. So far so good. And the last one there. There we go. All right, so we have piece 5 here. We're gonna grab piece number 6. That's the little 0 with the 2 notches next to it, 2 Roman numerals. And just like we've been doing, we're gonna start by anchoring the first tab to the next piece here. And again, just try to line that up as accurately as you can. Make sure it's nice and flush at the top. It's kind of hard to tell if it's flush because it's angled, but I think you'll get it. Okay, move that out of the way and begin getting our glue on the remaining tabs here. I definitely feel like I'm getting into a groove now. And that's kind of why I started with the pieces that I did. I'm just going to start with the easiest stuff and work your way up. So once you get into that groove, you get more focused. I think you end up doing better work. Okay. All right, so again, just get everything nice and lined up, and it should go pretty quick if you thin that glue out and don't use too much. And we do have some panels that are going to go on top of this that I've already inked and prepped. So these little horizontal lines that you see, they will eventually go away, and this will look nice and round. Okay, all right, so onto piece number 7. And same as before, we're going to anchor the top section first. There we go. And there we go. Just like that. It should go pretty quick. I'm going to move that out of the way. And let's grab the rest of these tabs. Get our glue on there. I'm going to start over here. And definitely getting that glue out to the very edge helps ensure not only that this thing stays intact and doesn't start falling apart, but it keeps everything looking very pristine and accurate, which is going to help out when it comes time to put the panels on. It's going to keep everything very consistent as well. So you always want to do your best to be as precise as you can, especially with the glue. Okay, so last one here before we close it up, and nothing's changed, still doing the same thing. I'm going to anchor that first tab, and there we go, just like that. Give that a few seconds, and we'll flip it out of the way. And now to close it up, which is the next step here, it's essentially the same thing. It's just we're not working with a loose piece. We actually have the section that we're going to be gluing it to is already kind of connected to the main structure here. But I'll still go over that with you. Okay. And get that lined up. And you'll notice that the other half of this, or the other end of it, it might be kind of rubbing up against your hand, and that's okay. Just get your hand in there. Try not to destroy the other piece. Just be gentle with it. But it is likely that it'll be getting in your way slightly. All right. Okay, so that just leaves this section here. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing actually. Well, you know what? Could actually probably close this thing up. Might be easier. Let's give it a go. That way we don't have to try to stick our glue nozzle in through the project, through the main structure here. Might just make this a lot easier. And I'm going a little bit heavier on the glue here because I've got one extra tab that I need to do this to as far as spreading the glue out. And I don't want it to dry up on me. And I'm literally just kind of just gently spreading / dabbing it onto the entire tab. Okay, so let's start at the top. Let's get that one in place. Just make sure that you're literally lining up the lines here, the edge of this with the line, the virtual line, I guess you could call it, that the score mark is creating. And if you want, you can actually even go down to the bottom and get that pressed into place, and then just continue to just gently nudge the rest of the section so that everything is as lined up as possible. There we go. All right, that's it. Okay, that looks pretty darn spot on. Okay, so there's our cool little jack-o'-lantern. And now what we want to do, we're going to get our vellum glued into place. Okay, so find all your vellum pieces. There's two for the, we got some for the eyeballs. We've got one for the nose, and then there should be two tiny red ones for the eyes. We've got a slightly different color for the eyes. Okay, now a couple ways of doing this. I think the easiest way would be to just actually glue the vellum to the outside, but I think we should maybe just glue it to the inside. It might be better for when we actually apply the panels. You can glue it to the outside if you want, but I really think that putting it in here is going to make the next step a little bit easier, and it won't, hinder. What I'm trying to say is this is the next step here, putting these panels in place, and just giving you some options here. But when we go to put these on here, it's going to be helpful to have a nice flat surface to work with when we apply this. So I think putting the vellum inside is going to prevent, it's just not going to hinder that process. I won't have any more obstacles to deal with. So I'm just moving these out of the way. And as far as the vellum goes, I'm going to use a series of little dots. We'll start with the mouth. Okay, and I'm just going to begin putting dots around the perimeter of the opening for the mouth, as close as you can get to the actual cutout without, getting it right on the edge. I think is going to be perfect. No one's really going to see the inside of this, especially because it's just a luminary, but you can see how I've got the glue spread out there. And I'm going to put this down flat on my table here so that when I pop this in, I get it exactly where I need it. And you know what, I just realized, I'm gonna do it, I gotta put it like this. Okay, so you may not be able to see this initially, just because it's hard to kind of get a camera in there, but do your best to get that in place. I'll show you what it looks like here in a second. And just press down along the edge there. I had a little bit of glue squirt out, but that's okay. Just grab something and just wipe it off before it sets. Okay, but that's essentially what we want it to look like. And you can see inside there, and just popped it right on top of the little areas with the glue. And we made this thing larger than necessary just to make sure that you can get it on there. Just do your best to apply it so that it covers the entire cutout of the mouth. Mine's a little bit off to the side, but it doesn't really matter. You can see from the front, it looks just fine. Okay, so Next, we're going to do the nose. Okay, so this is the little vellum piece for the nose. You can see it's going to go right there. I'll pop that out, and just like we did before, simply just use a series of little dots, I'll show you here in a second, around the perimeter of the nose. Now this is going to overlap on top of the previous layer of vellum slightly, just because, well, I put it up a little bit too high. But you can see the little dots of glue I have around the nose. And I'm going to take this piece here and just pop it right on there, just making sure I get it nice and centered. And just press that down into place. And just hold it for a few moments, let it set. Okay, it doesn't need to be perfectly flush with the surface, just as long as we get it in place and the light, when it shines through there, changes color, it'll look great. Okay, so we got the mouth, I keep saying that, mouth and the nose. Okay, moving up now, I've got these two little red ones for the eyes. Okay, so I'm going to try to go a little bit easier on the glue here, smaller dots, I guess. And if you do get some bigger than desired dots on there, which I just did, I'm just going to take and kind of dab that with my finger to thin it out. You can see how that looks. Okay, and then just take your little piece of vellum, and again, you're not going to be able to see this until I'm done, but pop it right into place. And you can actually put that down flat and give that a press, and you can see I've got that on there, and from the front you can see how nice that looks. Okay, so we'll repeat that same process again for the other eye. I actually like hitting it with my finger and kind of thinning that glue out. It makes it grab a lot faster too. So maybe I'll just do that with this one here. So you can see the glue that I just put around the eye. Put that down flat on your surface. It's actually on a flat side, so you can take advantage of your table. Get that nice and centered on there. And you can see the other eye. You can see what that looks like from the inside. Okay, so that just leaves the outer part of the eyeball. We'll do the same thing with that. I'm just going to use a series of little dots all the way around the perimeter. And then some of that's going to overlap on top of that red vellum as well. Okay, and again, you can kind of use your table for leverage there. Pop that right on there. Make sure that you're covering the entire cutout portion. And just press that down into place. I'll show you what that looks like there. And then from the front, looks like I had a little bit of glue shoot out there. I'm just going to take my little felt applicator, just rub some of that off so it doesn't blemish it, but that looks great. Okay, and the last one. Again, I'm just using a series of little dots. I guess if you decide to use this as a little gift box, you may want to put the vellum on the outside, then cover it with the panels that we're going to cover it with to hide it. There you can see the little dots of glue around the eye. Okay, and it's a little awkward, but it's not that bad. Pop it right into place. I'm using my table again to help me here. Press that down. There we go. There you can see how nice that worked. Okay. All right, so next up, we're actually going to put the bottom of this thing on just to help keep its shape while we begin putting the actual panels in place. So we're going to fold these tabs back in. Okay. And we got this black piece here. We're going to use that to close the bottom up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start towards the front here on one of these sections, section 2 or 3, doesn't matter. And I'm going to anchor this piece to one of these tabs. I'm going to go with number 2. Again, anchoring definitely helps with this process, especially when there's 8 sides involved. It's a lot easier to get one side glued down and anchored in position, because then when we close it, it'll fall into place exactly where it needs to go. I'm going to put this down on my surface and press down on that tab right there. Just pressing down on that tab there. Okay, it's got a really nice clean seam. Everything looks great. So we can flip this out of the way, and we're going to apply glue to the remaining tabs now. I'm going to close this piece up. Okay. Now we still have some wings that we need to feed through those little slits, but that's going to come after we put our panel on. So go ahead and spread that glue out. I need a little more there. Spread that glue out to the very ends, very edges of each of the tabs. Okay, I may need to, I've got, my glue over here is a lot more wet, so I'm just kind of grabbing some of that for these sections that are starting to become really tacky and are not really cooperating when I go to spread the glue around. Okay, so as we close this, focus on getting this side aligned, the side opposite of the side that is already hinged. And you may need to kind of squeeze your pumpkin a little bit to adjust the walls of each of the sides so that they line up as accurately as they can with the very edge of this bottom piece. And that came out awesome. Okay, just keep running your finger around the perimeter, making sure it's making good contact throughout. And then you can take your hand and press down on the tabs from the inside to help the rest of that surface area make contact with our little base. I'm taking a look at the very edge here. I think that looks great, and it's nice and solid now. Okay, so at this point, we start bringing our panels out that we're going to put over the main structure here. And we're going to start with the actual face here on the front. Now we need to connect these two sections together first. Okay, one thing that we want to do, I've got a really thick dowel here. This is almost, that's a ½ an inch at least, if not more. And I'm going to take and just slightly give this thing a little bit of a bend, just a little bit. Okay, we want it to curve just a tad, just like that. You can see the difference there between that one and that one, just a tiny curve. Okay, so let's just do that real quick to get these pieces ready. There's no exact science to this, but we are just kind of loosening up the fibers of the paper to give them a slight bend so that when we do go to apply it to the pumpkin, it kind of rests more naturally. Okay, and I want to do the same thing with this piece here, but I realize that there's some cutouts here and it's not going to be as smooth, so I'm just going to take and just kind of loosen up the fibers of the paper by just manually rolling the dowel kind of up and then pushing it up against the dowel, and you can see that it naturally gave it a little bit of a curve. Again, it doesn't have to be too crazy of a curve, just a tiny little bit. Okay. And if you think about, you know, what creates paper, there's all these interlocking little strands, fibers that eventually create this solid thing. And you can actually shape them. Okay, so I'm going to start off kind of like we did before. I'm going to start off by anchoring just this top tab. So just throw a tiny little bit of glue on that tiny little tab up there. Dab it a little bit, thin it out, grab your next section and line that up as accurately as you can. Now this is going to make sure that the face looks nice and seamless on the front, and also it's kind of necessary because of the cutout for the mouth. So I'm going to have to do that. Okay, get that anchored. You can actually fold that over onto itself and give it a press just to make sure you've got it lined up accurately, and that looks great right there in the seam. Okay, so what we're going to do next is apply glue to the next few tabs. I'm just going to go down like 3 or 4, maybe 5. They're really tiny, so don't overdo it on the glue. Definitely take a second to kind of dab that glue, thin it out, and then continue getting those two sections aligned. Get those two ends, like right at the very edge, lined up with that score mark as accurately and as closely as you can without going over. Okay, how many did I do there? Probably should have just done that last one there. It's okay. We'll just get some glue on that one. And I'm going to use my little scrap piece of paper to get that out there. And this is the last little tab on the top half of our pumpkin. Okay, so just hold that for a second, and then we'll finish up these 5 tabs here, and we can begin applying this. Okay, so that just leaves 5 more tabs here. Let's just get those ready. Let's do the middle section first before we go down to the last 3, just so that we can be as accurate as possible with these, since it is pretty much the focal point of this piece, looking at the face with its beautiful illumination that we'll have. Okay, there we go. So we got those 2 nice and lined up, and that just leaves these final 3 tabs. And again, just a few dots of glue, and then I'll take that and get it out to the edges with my finger. Beautiful. Okay, and just get those lined up. There we go. Perfect. Okay. All right, so I'm going to give this a few seconds to really set before we apply it to the front here, but you can see what that's going to look like. Okay. And there's going to be a little bit of a, well, this top section here is where the lid's going to go. So that's totally normal. Okay, so what we're going to do to apply this, after just kind of analyzing a little bit, I think what we're going to do is just focus our glue along the top and bottom and the sides here. I'm not overly concerned about getting a bunch of glue near the face at all, actually. So let's do this. Let's get our glue here. I'm going to spread that glue out to the top as well as the bottom. Okay, and then just a little bit along the edge so that that sits nice and flat there. Okay, and then I'm going to take and spread that glue out to the bottom as well. Okay, and again, this is probably the most important part of the face, obviously, so do your best to get that nice and aligned. Okay, just press down right up at the top. Make sure that it's lined up with the little score marks that we have there. Okay, press that down into place, and then get that bottom in place as well. Now, hopefully that glue didn't start to set too much. Okay, I'm kind of pulling it, trying to get it nice and taut up against the side there. Okay, and that turned out really well, actually. Yeah, that actually worked out really well. Okay, so that was the hard part, but it wasn't even that bad. Again, just you gotta make sure that everything is nice and flush with the bottom, and you want it pretty much lined up to that little score mark right there. This is the prototype, but once we put the hat on, a lot of that, if there's any imperfection here, a lot of that's gonna disappear, and you can see how nice that's gonna look. So, nevertheless, a couple other things that I wanna mention here is you'll notice that there are a few of these panels that have slight little notches cut into the side right here. And we want to make sure that we use those in the correct spots. Those are going to go right here in these areas, and that's so that we don't obstruct the holes that we have there for the little wings that we're going to put in eventually. These are symmetrical pieces. Okay, so they're exactly the same width at the top and bottom. Okay, but again, you want to make sure that for here we want one piece that has the little notches going on the right hand side, and then for the other side here we want them on the left. Okay, this one does not have any notches, neither does this one. These two have notches. We're going to reserve those for the other side. These are going to go on the back, so we need this one here with the notches on the right hand side first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by just putting glue at the top, okay, and the bottom. And I'm going to spread that glue out to the very edges on the top and bottom. Okay, and then if you want, you just do a thin little line of glue along the very edge here, just to kind of help that stay in place. And just line that up, just right up to that score mark there. Okay, make sure that it's nice and flush at the bottom as well, and try to pull it taut so that it really hugs the entire structure itself. We don't want to see too big of a gap between this panel and the actual structure. And there's going to be a little bit of a gap between these two layers. That's completely normal. But again, since we have a nice orange color for the main structure, it kind of pretty much just blends in. You don't really notice it too much. And on top of that, we've got some leaves that are going to go over this. So that's going to hide any of those imperfections. Okay, but that looks great. I'm going to grab this piece that has the little notches on the left-hand side. And I'll do the same thing here. Throw a little bit of glue at the top and bottom. I'm going to spread that out. Got to get in the habit of using that thing. It looks like probably something that my friend Chris found at like an antique store or something. Okay. All right, just line it up as accurately as you can. Press it down, bring it down. You can see how nicely those little notches line up, and actually looks pretty darn good here as far as the seam goes. Okay, so that turned out real nice. Okay, continue holding that down until everything sets. Beautiful. Okay, so now for this section and this section, we're just using these little panels that don't have any specific notches on them. Okay, so a little bit of glue at the top, at the bottom, do a thin little line along the side, spread that glue out all the way to the edge. Okay, and let's get that in place. Line that up just below or right up to that little score mark. Bring this piece down, kind of holding it at the bottom and holding it at the top, and then I'm like pulling from the top here with my thumb, kind of pulling it towards the top, and that's kind of stretching it and making it sit nice and flat on the rest of the surface of the main structure here. Okay, but that is coming out very nice actually. Okay, all right, so on to the next piece. Again, this one does not have any notches. Throw a little bit at the top, a little bit at the bottom. Oops, whoa. I know you're excited about Halloween there, buddy, but we got to finish this first. All right, okay. So moving right along here. Again, just get it centered, line it up, take a look at how it relates to its neighbor. Try to get those seams as close as you can. Give it a little pull. There we go, beautiful. And you can see the inking that I did around the perimeter on each of these panels. It really adds to the nice look. Yep, that looks great. Okay, all right, so now we've got some little notches there. Again, you want to make sure when we put this one down that the notches are on the right-hand side. Okay, so just like before, start with the glue on the top and bottom, a little one around the perimeter. Okay, keep that notch to the right. Line that up. Take a look at where the notches are. Make sure those line up nicely. I'm putting my thumb on the bottom section here now, keeping that in place, and the notch looks great. The location of the little cutout for the notch, I should say. And there we go. And just run your finger along the perimeter here. There we go. And that just leaves one more. Now this time our little notch is going to be on the left. And let's get our glue in place. Okay, spread that glue out. I'm just going to make sure everything looks nice and crisp, as I call it. Notch to the left, get that nice and centered. I would focus more on trying to get this section aligned with, well, actually, you know what? It fits perfectly. It's nice and flush with both sides right now. I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but again, we're creating something round with paper, and it's It's always going to come with, you know, there's always going to be a little bit of an imperfection here or there. But I think overall that looks great. Okay, so that's that for the actual pumpkin. Okay, so next up are the little leaves that we're going to put on the actual pumpkin head. And what we want to do is, while we're gluing these together, we're going to shape them a little bit so they're not so flat looking. Okay, so obviously you want to start off by matching up the corresponding pieces here, as some of them are a little different. Okay, we've got two different styles. Okay, so you can see that one, that kind of looks like Wisconsin. I think I've got Wisconsin on the brain here. Okay, and the bigger one here, the longer one, it's going to go first. It's going to go right here. Okay, but obviously we need to glue this on first. So let's start gluing. Just apply your glue to this section. Okay, and then we'll, as it's drying, so we're putting it on this shadow piece here. As this is drying, we're going to take and I'm going to grab a dowel, and I'm going to start kind of shaping this a little bit, just kind of curling it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to curl this one out. You can use a dowel, you can use your fingers, whatever you want to do. Okay, and then I'm going to take and kind of push this in a little bit right here. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to continue kind of pressing down to get the glue to really stick. I'm going to take this and curl it down. Take this and curl it up, just making it random. You don't have to follow along exactly. And the cool thing is that once the glue really dries, it really holds the shape like permanently. Okay, so you can see how cool that looks. Looks like a, you know, a leaf that you'd find sitting on the ground, not completely flat. Okay, so there you go. There's that one. And this guy here is going to get glued right to this section here. All right, so let's take some glue, just apply it to just this top section. It's kind of dangling and hanging there. We don't want to glue the whole thing flat to our pumpkin. So this one's going to go right here. Just get that nice and centered. There we go. Okay, that looks great. And now we're going to pick one of these little guys here. Again, these are identical, so it doesn't really matter. But get your glue on the back. We're going to glue that down to the shadow elements, and then we'll start shaping it a little bit, just like we did the first one. And of course, you're going to repeat that a couple more times for the other side. I'll show you where everything goes. Okay, so just pop that right on top of the shadow piece. It's almost like a cedar color. What color is that actually? That is, where is it? Oh well. All right, so again, grab your dowel, and as it's drying, I'm going to take and I'm going to curl these leaves, or the tip of this one, forward a little bit. And I'm going to take this and curl it down. I'll curl this one up, and this one up, and just that little one down. Okay, just keep pressing. And that guy is going to go right here, like so. Now if it's easier, you can tuck that one underneath. Okay, but I guess his hair is basically made out of leaves. Who would have thunk it? Of course, props to, big kudos to Ron Gutman, our art director, who designed this beauty. And he thought, well, his hair is going to be leaves. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that one's there. This one's here. It looks great. Now, do the same thing on the other side. So at this point, if you want to craft along with me, you can. I'm going to do these on camera. I think you understand where everything goes, so it'd be a good time to pause. And the next thing I'm going to do, so you can scrub forward, is I'm going to start putting these wings together. So when you see that, you can, hit play again. But we're going to do both of these sides so there's no confusion. I don't want to skip anything at all. Okay, so just working my way around the little cutout of this leaf here. And we'll get that in place. And just like we did the first time, while it's drying, I'm going to grab my dowel and start giving this thing a little bit of character. So the other one was kind of coming out. I kind of like that. I'm going to bring this one out too. Okay, I'm going to take this guy and fold him down. Again, keep pressing while you do that. Make sure everything's making good contact. I'm going to take this side and bring it up. This side's going down. This side's going up. There we go. Okay, and then I can actually take it right in the center here. Start folding that. Maybe bring this part down. Just make it interesting. See the shape that I just created there? Okay, let's get our glue right at the top section here. Okay, and get that glued into place. That's going just to the left of the face right there. Kind of want to make it flush with the orange panel that we have there, like so. And the last one here. Yeah, and of course, without fail, anytime I film my videos, my neighbor decides that he wants to cut his grass. So you get to hear that and the crickets. Wouldn't say that our studio is state-of-the-art. Okay, so we've got our last little leaf here. I've shaped it. I'm going to grab our glue and we'll get this one into place. And then let's tuck that underneath. And we'll put it on top. Whatever feels the most natural so that they're not fighting each other. There we go. Okay. All right, so the leaves are in place. He's really starting to take shape there. And I may want to actually curl this down just a tad. Okay, and if necessary, you can always take a little pop dot or something to get this to kind of hug the face a little bit more. Okay, but either way, that's fine. We'll take this one. I'm going to curl this one down like that. Okay. There we go. All right, we'll worry about that in a minute. But let's take a look and see how things are starting to shape up. That looks really cool. Okay. Okay, so for the wings, as you can see, I've actually embossed this piece here. Each wing is going to be made up of one of these pieces, and then you have this piece here. And if you look at the top tab, you'll see that there's some Roman numerals cut into it. This has got a 2 on it, and this one has a 1. So these are also a 1 and a 2. Okay, and each side needs a 1 and a 2. Okay, so this is piece number 1. That's going to go like this. We're going to get that glued down. We're not going to put glue on these tabs here, the ones that are sticking out. We're just going to put glue on the actual structure itself. Okay, and we're going to get that glued down into place. You want to definitely fold this before you start gluing because the wings are kind of bent. They're not flat. It's almost like they're flapping a little bit. So go ahead and get your glue on these little ribs. You can probably do the entire section here all in one fell swoop. Shouldn't be a problem. Okay, pop that on there. And I would not do this flat. You want to keep this bent the entire time, because otherwise if you try to do it flat and then try to release it, and I would actually fold it completely in half like this as you're pressing it down. And then there we go. Get the other half in place and try to maintain a little bit of a bend to it. That bend, it's a little challenging for paper when it has to kind of cross two different what do they call them, vertices maybe? Yeah, I think that's a proper term for it. Okay, so we got that one in place. That looks great. Now we're going to take and glue the other side on like that. Okay, and again, make sure you keep it somewhat bent, or folded, I should say. Okay, and again, don't put any glue on the little tabs. I want to keep those nice and clean for now. Again, we're going to use those to anchor it to the actual body of our little Batty pumpkin. Okay, there we go. And just pop that right into place. Get it nice and centered. There we go, whoops. And I will make sure that that is the back of one of the sides and not the front. Okay, take a look at it from the other side too. Make sure everything's making good contact. Now, see, because I embossed it, it definitely makes it a little more challenging to glue the paper down onto the embossed area. And that's just because it's not flat. Okay, and that looks great. Okay, so that's a good side there. Okay, and you can see these two flaps, or these two little tabs here. What we're going to do is we're going to put glue on this side and push that up against the inside of the main structure. So we can actually do that now. Go ahead and take, and you're going to feed these through little slits. Okay, both, there's 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top. Just feed them through there. That's why we have those little cutouts there, and that's all starting to come full circle here. Push it in as far as it'll go. Okay, there we go. You can see how the wings are going to appear. And then if you take a look inside, you see those 2 little tabs there. And I'm going to put glue, and it's going to be hard to show you right now, but I'll do my best. Yeah, don't even worry about looking at it right now. Just going to throw a little bit of glue on each of the tabs there, on the top and bottom, or on both sides, I should say. And I'm going to spread that glue onto those tabs. You really can't see this right now, but I will show you how to do this in just a second. Let me clear off my finger. I got way too much glue on there. Okay, I'm going to use a dowel to do this. Kind of made a mess there. There we go, that's fine. Okay, try to keep the tabs in as far as they'll go. And then we just need to push those tabs up against the inside of the structure there. And there we go. You can use your fingers. I'm using a dowel because I'm going to show you what I'm actually doing here. So you can see inside there, I've got the tabs spread. I'm going to push them up against the side of the actual structure. Okay, just like that. I'm going to use my fingers to do it now that you kind of get the gist of it. Okay, I'll spread those other tabs apart. And I'll show you the end result here in a second. I had a little bit of glue shoot out there, so be careful with that. Okay. There we go. So you can see how I've spread those tabs out and glued them up against the inside of the wall there. Okay. Now if you find that the little leaves are maybe obstructing the wings a bit, just bend them whichever way you need to kind of get rid of that. Okay, this one, that looks fine. Whoops, there we go. Okay, so we got that one set up. Now we just need to create the other wing. And this way, I need to fold this way. Okay, and it's going like that. So we're gonna glue that down like this. And then the other one is gonna go on the back, just like we did the first time. So go ahead and get your glue on the little overlay, the little ribs of the wings. Okay. And press that down. Kind of keep it folded the entire time here. Get that lined up as accurately as you can. There we go. Keep it folded and then press down on the rest of it. There we go. Okay, give that a good fold. Perfect. That one went on easier for some reason. Okay, and then the last one here, that's going to go on top like so. So let's get our glue on this guy. And you definitely, when we go to anchor this to the body, you definitely want to use glue. I wouldn't use, you know, any sort of tape or anything like that. It's not going to hold it. You definitely want to use glue. It's pretty much permanent. All right, and just pop that right on there. Make sure you keep it folded. There we go. Got a little glue shoot out there. That's okay though. There we go. Okay. Just work all those areas. All right. Okay, so now, again, I'm going to take these little tabs and slide them through, apply glue to these sections, and then spread them up so that this side is going up against the inside of our main pumpkin structure. Okay, so slide those tabs right in there, just like that. Okay. And take and put some glue on both sides of the tabs. You can actually put them on the structure too. I'll show you here. See how they're on the structure? Because once we spread this apart, right here, it's going to go up against, I'm trying to show you here. I'm going to push that up against the side. Same with that one, push that up against the side. It's a lot easier with your fingers, and it's a lot easier if you just kind of look at it from here. You can feel what you're doing. And feel those two tabs, spread them apart, and push them up against the inner wall of our pumpkin. Kind of having a hard time with that one. There we go. It's just a matter of getting your finger in there and then pressing. Okay, I'll show you the end result again here in just a second. It's just a lot easier to do it this way. Okay. Just keep holding that. What's going on here? There we go. Okay, that tab just needs a little extra love. Beautiful. Okay, so the wings are nice and folded, and I still have one more little tab here that I just didn't take. Let me just press that down and hold. Okay, so you can see how that's starting to turn out. And we can take and fold these a little bit more if we want. Okay, but again, you can see the tabs there pushed up against the inner wall, holding our little wings in place. Perfect. Okay, so there's our hats. And all that's left to do is finish up with our little tendrils. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's two at the top here. We're going to put two on the back, similar like, you know, what I have there. And then we'll grab a couple more, and we're just going to put them in a few little spots here on the front here. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right on the very edge of, very tip of this little tendril. And this one's going to get glued right here. Okay. And you could do whatever you want with it. It just adds a little extra something to it. Okay, so this one here, I'm going to take and just kind of curl it, and then I'm going to curl it in the center. Okay, and then really give it a full curl right in the center there. I just want like one little loop there. Okay. I got to train the rest of this. 1 second. There you go. Curl that nice and deep. There we go. Almost. Cool. Just like that. Whatever you want to do with it. This is your hairstyle now. It's up to you. You are the jack-o'-lantern stylist at this point. But we're going to put this one here, and we'll take two more, and we'll put one on the other end here, right here, and then we'll do another one right here. And you'll see, it'll add just a little bit of a little bit of interest to it. I'm going to curl this one completely. This is probably the longest one. Give it a good curl, let it loose, grab the tip, throw some glue on there, just the very, very edge, get it nice and thin, and we'll glue that one right there. Okay, maybe we'll have it come this way. That's fine. And then we got a little shorty over here, and I'm gonna just wrap that one around. You can always style it however we want afterwards. Let it dry first before you mess with the curls. Okay, there we go. And the last one, I'll pop that on there, right there. I'll just let that curl kind of hang right there. Okay, so as I mentioned, well, we just need to put this thing on the base now. We have a nice, beautiful base to put him on. So flip it over, and let's get our glue on the bottom. And I'm going to bring this out to as close to the edge as I can without making a mess on my beautiful orange panels. Okay, and that way it'll look very flush from the side. Yeah, that's not, shouldn't even hit that surface at all if you did it right. Okay, and you'll see that there are some markers on the top of this as well to help you get this nice and centered. Now obviously you want the nose to match up with the very corner. And mine is not perfect, but that looks good. And that base really just takes it over the top, I think. Just makes it look very, very classic and professional. Okay, so there you have it. And I would just kind of continue pressing down on that to make sure that everything looks nice and flush there at the bottom. Okay, you don't want it hovering at all. And there is the hat, and there is our completed project. Okay, so as I mentioned before, you're going to take your other little set of leaves, and you're going to put them on this back part here, and then just add a few little tendrils behind it. If you want, something you can do is just actually glue the tendrils to the back of this from the get-go so that it's already there. I'm going to make this one really curly. Okay, and then just kind of pull it. And you can literally just glue it right to the back and let that set, and then you can just glue this whole thing to the hat and call it a day instead of trying to tuck it back there. Okay, so however you want to do it. You can omit these completely if you want, but I think they're cute. Okay, let's get this one curled again. Throw that on there, and then, you know, obviously I'm going to take, and I still have that that bling on a roll that I want to add to the base, and then of course there's always room for a little bit of bling here or there. So add your rhinestones if you want some ideas for where to put your rhinestones. Take a look at the final photo of the project on the website, and you'll see that. Okay, and I'm going to take a actually a pop dot. 3D pop dot. Oh, it's right here. And just throw that on the back. And again, it's going to go opposite of where the other one is, right there. Well, there she is, all lit up. I've got, obviously, an electronic tea light that I put inside. This is a little bit of a different one. It changes colors if you tap on it, but it's got a nice wide base, plenty of light, and you can see how cute he looks when he's all done. So there he is. Beautiful little centerpiece, and I totally see, as I mentioned in the video, you know, adding other non-paper related things, like there's some really cool like Halloween floral that's available out there. You can put that around there, or who knows what. See what you have in your stash as far as your Halloween decor goes, and, you know, add this to something and create like a, you know, a full-out display around, you know, centering around this little guy here who is really cool, actually. Probably one of my favorite pieces now. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you head over to your YouTube and hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell so that you get notifications. And if you make this or anything from our Spooky Time bundle, I'd love to see it, and so would the rest of our community. So head over to your Facebook and do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, where you can join myself, and I think we got like 32 or 33,000 dreamers now, so come hang out with us. But anyway, happy Halloween, everyone, almost, and as always, I look forward to crafting with you again. Hey, thanks for crafting along with me. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out some of our other videos, and also please consider hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to visit our site and check out our free SVG section, where we have over 140 free SVG files complete with assembly videos. I look forward to crafting with you soon.